The New York Times has done an investigation into numerous documents and conducted interviews to get a better sense of how Donald Trump became as wealthy as he is. And through their investigation, they were able to find that, first off, Trump is not a self-made millionaire, something that we all suspected anyway. But more importantly, he likely engaged in fraud in order to save millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes as he inherited his father's wealth. So let me give you the details. The Times investigation, again based on a vast trove of confidential tax returns and financial records, reveals that Trump received the equivalent today of at least $413 million from his father's real estate empire, starting when he was a toddler and continuing to this day. So they continue to write, the reporters continue to write that he and his siblings set up a sham corporation to disguise millions of dollars in gifts from their parents. Records and interviews show. Records indicate that Trump helped his father take improper tax deductions worth millions more. He also helped formulate a strategy to undervalue his parents' real estate holdings by hundreds of millions of dollars on tax returns, sharply reducing the tax bill when those properties were transferred to him and his siblings. So I have more details in just a moment, but Cenk, jump in.
So first of all, I'd like to apologize because I got this story wrong. I said from day one that he did not just take just a $1 million loan from his dad. I said that he very likely got part or maybe the entirety of the inheritance and got anywhere between $40 to $200 million from his dad. Turns out I was wrong. He got way more than that. He got $413 million, at least that the New York Times could track, from his father in both legal and apparently illegal ways, and some of which we already knew and others that we did not. So, but I like that the New York Times gave credit to wonderful journalists who'd been covering Trump all along. They said the New York Times was far too credulous about Trump along with the other media, but great reporters like Wayne Barrett and David K. Johnston were not, and they would show different things that he had done wrong. First of all, that so-called small loan of $1 million. You guys remember when you got a small loan of $1 million from your daddy? Right?
Yeah.
So no, it was not $1 million. It was $14 million, okay? And he said, oh, I returned it with interest. Not remotely true. Another time, then this they got caught on and had to pay a fine. His dad bought $3.5 million of chips from one of his Trump's casinos to bail him out. That's illegal. He just took him home. He never gambled. That's basically just giving someone $3.5 million. Now you know that if you give someone a gift over $10,000, you have to report it to the IRS and pay taxes on it. They didn't because they broke the law over and over again. And by the way, why did they just pay a small fine? Why? They should have both gone to jail over that. You would have gone to jail over that. But they're connected, so they didn't. So Fred Trump got away with it, Donald Trump got away with it. Some of that we already knew, but I did not know the scale of it. $413 million he got from his daddy, from the age of 3 on. He was just shoveled money time after time after time. It got so bad by the end, before his dad died, his dad started to worry that Donald Trump was trying to change the will and take his siblings' money to sink it into his failing businesses as usual.
Yeah, okay, so let's stop right there because that's what I want to talk about a little bit. Remember, he went bankrupt 6 times. He went bankrupt 6 times. He inherited at least $413 million from his father. I mean, if he literally did nothing, he just took that money and put it in a certificate of deposit account, he would make money off. He would make a lot of money off of it, even with a low interest rate. I mean, how do you go bankrupt 6 times? How? Give me $100,000, okay? Get anything, and I'll make more money off of that. How the hell did he go bankrupt that many times?
No, this is why I told you guys he couldn't manage his way out of a paper bag. He's one of the most incompetent businessmen in the history of America. To be fair to him, the only thing he's good at is lying. They call that marketing. No, you could do marketing and be truthful. No, he's a pathological liar, and he was aided and abetted by a lot of the press because they would just report whatever he said as true. They never bothered to investigate it other than those journalists who were heroes that I mentioned earlier. So he's a buffoon. If he put the $413 million into an index fund that just went along with the stock market, Now it would be worth way more than he has, way more. But instead he's a serial bungler, and he bungled away all the money over and over again. And look, this story is incredibly long, but there are countless times where his dad has to come back in. And his
bail him
dad,
out. And
by the way, his dad, bad guy in a lot of other ways, and some of his business practices were questionable. They clearly did tax fraud, according to this, so that's illegal, etc. I'm not trying to, tell you a rosy story about his dad, but his dad was smart.
And
he
also
was
very
shrewd.
hardworking. Like, he had a work ethic that we have certainly not experienced with his son. And yeah, I mean, of course, he had a lot of downsides, but he worked hard, and he was concerned that Trump was going to squander the wealth, which in a lot of ways he did.
And look, there are charges about different racist rallies that Fred Trump was at. I'm not trying to paint him in a positive light. I'm just telling you, when you read the story, the guy was a businessman, and he worked hard, and he built that money, yes, by hook or by crook, he did, but he was at least competent. Meanwhile, his son, what a loser. And his dad had to constantly be like, oh my God, I gotta bail him out again and again and again. But the part that really got under my skin, because I love my dad, and I give him credit all the time, is Trump in the press kept saying, oh, my dad wasn't worth that much. He was just in the outer boroughs. I'm the real successful businessman. I built in Manhattan.
Oh, he's pathetic.
It turns out he had been minimizing how much money his dad had made for two reasons. And it turns out his dad actually had $1 billion. Didn't have 200 million, he had $1 billion. Okay, one, he wanted to say, I'm the billionaire. I'm the one who became the billionaire, not my dad. Oh, you're such a terrible guy, man. Anyone who's had a dad who's been decent to them knows what a scumbag this Donald Trump guy is. Okay, and the second reason is because they didn't want to say how much money he had because they were going to evade taxes.
Exactly. So let's get to that, because I think the details and the findings here are important, and I want you to be aware of as many of them as possible. So first, let's talk about the whole real estate, inheriting the real estate, and then skirting taxes on that inheritance. Well, you pay taxes on the real estate or the property based on its value. And so evidence shows, based on the documents that the reporters reviewed here, that Trump and his siblings purposely undervalued, severely undervalued those properties in order to save hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes. Also, Fred and Mary Trump transferred well over $1 billion in wealth to their children, which could have produced a tax bill of at least $550 million under the 55% tax rate then imposed on gifts and inheritances. But what did they actually pay in taxes based on the fraud that they engaged in? Well, the Trumps paid a total of $52.2 million, or about 5% tax records show. So when they should have paid 55%, they only paid 5%. And part of that was lying about the value of the properties.
So understand what that means. That's theft from you and me, from all American taxpayers. Because other people pay those taxes, you pay your taxes. If you don't pay your taxes, you go to prison, right? So they were supposed to pay $550 million in taxes, they paid 50. That means they skirted on $500 million in taxes. Go ahead, try to skirt on what, $50,000? You're going to prison. Go ask Wesley Snipes if you go to prison for evading taxes. These guys evaded taxes to the tune of $500 million.
It's worse,
and they got away with it.
It's worse than that, though, okay? Look, I get that there is an ideological divide when it comes to estate taxes, okay? I happen to fall on the side of, hey, after a certain amount of money that you get from your parents after they pass away, you should pay taxes on it. And it's not being double taxed because it's new income for you. You didn't earn that money. It's money that your parents earned. But it's worse when it comes to what the Trumps did, because the Trumps didn't just create their wealth out of thin air. Like, again, Fred Trump did work hard, but he also received a lot of money in government subsidies for affordable housing, right? And so taxpayers essentially helped him build his wealth, and he didn't want to pay the taxpayers back after he passed. So let me give you the details on that. In the late 1940s, Fred Trump obtained roughly $26 million in federal loans to build two of his largest developments, Beach Haven Apartments near Coney Island, Brooklyn, and Shore Haven Apartments a few miles away. So again, that's just one case where he received $26 million in government subsidies in order to develop these properties. And by the way, he profited from that.
So if you're a conservative and you say, oh man, I just want the government to leave me alone. That's his money, man. He should be able to do whatever he wants. But wait a minute, then give me my $26 million back. Okay, the American taxpayer helped the Trumps build their fortune. And in return, they spit in our face. While you paid their taxes, they didn't. It's not only immoral, because we're supposed to be a community, and how much money do you have to pay in taxes? And it's hard for you because you live on a certain income, right? They had all the money in the world. They just chose not to pay their taxes. And he funneled it to his loser son because his loser son couldn't stand on his own 2 feet. And then they have the temerity to talk about bootstraps. You know how many different revenue streams that Fred Trump set up for Donald Trump? 295. Because Donald Trump couldn't do anything on his own. Stats like, okay, another one and another one and another one. Both to evade taxes, and because Trump kept losing the money like the idiot that he is. Okay, I just gotta tell you this because it was amazing. By age 3, Mr. Trump was earning $200,000 a year in today's dollars from his father's empire. They started funneling money to him right away. He's born on third base, thought he had a triple. Did you get $200,000 a year when you were 3? By the time he was 8, he was already a millionaire. He says he's a self-made man. Pathetic. By the time he was 17, his father had given him part ownership in a 52-unit apartment building. Soon after college, he started receiving the equivalent of $1 million a year from his father. The money increased to more than $5 million annually in his 40s and 50s. In his 40s and 50s, when he's a grown-ass man. Donald Trump has always been a loser who relied on his daddy. And it turns out they broke every law they needed to break in the meanwhile to hurt the American taxpayers. That's who Donald Trump is. The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.